All right. I think it's better we start. So we believe that the others will join while we start off with the welcome and introduction. So you are all welcome to this event. Ladies and gentlemen, I can see Alex, I can see Jeff, Ojawale, I can see you, Oluwatosin, Onesimus, I can see you, I can also see Terence and T. Okay, we would like to know where you are joining from. So we'd like you to jump in the chat and type your name and where you are joining from, all right? Or you can just type where you are joining from, you can see your name from there. So we could just do that very quickly and then we see how that goes, all right? Yes, just type in the chat. Where are you joining from? We'd like to know. We are aware that people are joining from different parts of the country and even some outside of the country to be part of this session. So please, we'd like to know where you are joining from. My name is Shehu Zubairu. I am an associate partner with Human Capital Partners, and I will be anchoring this session today alongside with the panelists who have been prepared to handle this particular masterclass. All right, so I would like us to type in the chat. All right, let's type in the chat. Uju, I believe everyone can type. Am I correct? Do they have the part?
Yes.
Fantastic. So let's get responses in the chat, and then we would read that out very, very quickly while we use the opportunity to allow others to join. So yes, responses, please. Okay, Oluwatoyin, thank you very much. You're the one that hit, you belled the cat, all right? Oluwatoyin is calling from Lagos. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Yes, who else? Who else? Who else? Where are you calling from? Just type your location and then we'll read that out. Okay, just type your location and we'll read that out. Okay, someone says the chat is disabled here. I think it's for question and answers, but you do to go to the chat and you will be able to chat. Okay, not the Q&A button. So look for the chat and type. You should be able to type in the chat. We'll take the Q&A button by the time we start. It should be activated. Okay, who else is here? I can see some names. Maybe I'll just see if I can call a few people. Alexander, I know you are here. You are welcome. Jeff, I know you are here. You are welcome. Would like to know where you are joining from. Or Jawale, you are welcome to the program. And then, of course, Oluwatoyin is joining in directly from Lagos. Onesimus, you are welcome. And then I have T, you are welcome. Terence, you are welcome to the program. Let's know where you are joining from. Onesimus, located in Lagos. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Ojawale, you are also welcome joining in from Lagos. So we have an all-Lagosian audience for now. Let's see people join from other parts of the country as well. So as soon as you type, I'll be reading it. Alexander says, hi. Good morning. My name is Alexander, joining from Lagos. Alexander, you are welcome to this masterclass event. Okay, thank you very much. Who else is yet to indicate their location? All right. Who else is yet to indicate their location? Okay. We can type that in the chat. And then secondly, I would also like to know what exactly would you like to take from this program? If you have an expectation in your mind, just type that as well in the chat. I can read that up before we jump into the main discussion for the day. So just type what are your expectations? If it's 1, if it's 2, just type it in the chat and we'll be good. And if you are just joining, this is Human Capital Partners. We used to be the executive selection and training arm of KPMG, and we are into executive search. We are also into learning and development. We are into HR advisory. The entire value chain of HR is what we offer, and management consulting. That's what we do. All right. And for some of us who have joined, I'm sure would have interacted with one of our services, in the last few years. So this is Human Capital Partners. My name is Shehu Zubairu. I am an associate partner with HCP. And so you are welcome to our webinar series. And today we'll be looking at Beyond Authority, Leadership Development Masterclass for Leaders. That's what we are going to be looking at today. So you are all welcome to this event. All right, so I would introduce my panelists. It's actually over 11 minutes now. I think we're about 30 minutes behind. So we'll just jump into the conversation now, and hopefully others will be joining. Today, we are going to be looking at a whole lot. We'll be addressing the issue of leadership versus authority, influence versus authority. This is what we'll be looking at. And you find out that most managers in many organizations, as a matter of fact, are promoted based on their excellence as individuals or their competencies, technical competencies as individuals. But when it comes to leadership excellence and effectiveness, there is usually a gap. So people are thrown into the leadership role without sufficient preparation. And of course, this cuts across different organizations in Nigeria, whether it's the banking sector or the financial services industry, or the telecom sector, or the energy sector, or the fast-moving consumer good or manufacturing sector, or even in government, right? And of course, this has caused several team underperformance, all right? And this underperformance have far-reaching implications to the achievement of the organization's strategy, and of course, to the effective use of resources. Okay, so the essence of this conversation is to see how we can transition from just being an authority manager to a leader of influence. Now, Beyond Authority webinar is a 45 minutes practical masterclass. So this is going to be about 45 minutes, and then we are going to be throwing it open for you to ask your questions. What are the peculiar challenges you are encountering at the moment, all right, as a manager? Whether you are a new manager, or you are a frontline manager, or you are a middle-level manager, or you are an executive within your organization, all right? Whether you are managing a new team, or you have been grafted into a new team, or you are coming into a new organization, how do you transit from being an authority leader to an influential leader? And this is the agenda we are going to be using to drive the session. We're going to start with, I'm going to be introducing my facilitators shortly, and then we'll be looking at this from three major segments. We'll be looking at the leadership gap. Where does it exist within the organization? And then, of course, we'll be looking at the influential leadership. That will be the second segment of discuss. And then, of course, the last one is we'll be looking at practical stories from our panelists on how they have been able to navigate their way through, this gap of moving from being an authority leader to becoming an influential one. And then we are going to throw the conversation open to each and every one of us to ask questions and, of course, contributions. We're also going to be talking about HCP and what we do in the area of leadership, how we support organizations, in developing their leaders. This we've been doing for the past 11 years as Human Capital Partners, and then, of course, over 20 years as the Executive Selection and Training arm of KPMG. And of course, we are also going to be having a poll at some point. We'll be having interactive questions. Would appreciate if you participate in the interactive questions so we can get your views with regards to the subject matter as well. So it's going to be a conversation between the panelists, myself, the moderator, and then, of course, each and every one of us, the listeners. Now, we have four panelists. We have Innocent Osege, and apologies, Innocent Osege will not be able to make it this morning. He had a little emergency that is beyond his control, and so he's not able to make this session. However, not to worry, I have two veteran leaders in the house, people who have managed teams at different level, whether it's at the frontline manager level down to the executive level. All right, these are the people we have brought on board. The first person I have on the list is Adetutu Shongunuga. Adetutu Shongunuga has a BA certification. She's MBTI certified, and she's also a DDI accredited trainer. Adetutu Shongunuga is a success profile analyst from the Development Dimension International DDI, one of the leading institutes on leadership globally. All right. Tutu is going to be handling one of the sessions. So Tutu, you are welcome to this program. And then secondly, we have Mrs. Ovota Iyamo. Mrs. Ovota Iyamo is a seasoned HR professional who is involved in organizational development, and her experience actually spanned over 30 years. She has helped with organizational transformation, especially with leadership development across several organizations, from the financial services sector down to the oil and gas sector, the professional services sector, and then, of course, the FMCG sector as well. Now, she has also led impactful acculturation and diversity program across multiple organizational levels. And she has done a lot of culture transformation events. And there's a whole lot of experience she's going to be bringing just by interacting with leaders at different levels, and the things that she has seen, things that has led to underperformance, both for the team, for the organization, and of course, for the unit. And so these are the people I have brought on board to speak to us. So once again, you are welcome to the program. I will start very quickly with an interactive question. I have Uju at the back end. Uju is helping us with all the back end job, trying to ensure that the polls are run properly, and of course, to also ensure that we have the questions on time. So I'll really appreciate if we participate actively and ensure that we can get your own views with regards to the subject. So you are also part of the event. You are welcome once again. Now, there is a question she has posted in the chat, and I would like to get your view on that. And that's exactly how we will start before I bring my panelists on board. The question is, think of the most effective leader you've worked with. Just for a second, think of the most effective leader you've worked with. Did they lead by authority, or did they lead by influence? I'd like you to think about that. And then would like you to put your response in the chat. Is it by authority or by influence? So you can just type authority, or you can just type influence. Your most effective leader. Think about that person. I'm sure you have a picture already. Okay? How did they lead effectively? Did they lead by authority, or did they lead by influence? That has been posted by Human Capital Partners in the chat room. Can I get your responses as my panelists come on board? Yes. I'm in the chat waiting for the first response. Fastest finger.
Could you have a prize for fastest finger?
I think I'll get one, really. This is looking like something that we'll have to get a prize for. Okay. Thank you very much, Ojawale. Ojawale has belled the cat. Influence. Okay, thank you very much, Onesimus. Influence as well. Interesting. It's like we have the tribe of influence here. Let's see if we can get those from the tribe of authority. If I can get one or two people respond, I would move on. Yes. Okay. I have two responses. Oluwatoyin responded first earlier. I'm hoping to get her response as well. Let me also see who else is here. Okay, T. That's all I can see. T would like to get your view on this. Terence would also like to get your view on this as well. Okay. Without wasting much time, I will move, and as soon as the responses come, I will pause and read them out. Okay, I'll pause and read them out. So, Tutu, once again, we are happy to have you on board, and it will be nice to interact with you and also tap from your wealth of experience with regards to how managers lead in terms of influence and, of course, in terms of authority. Okay, so you're welcome.
Thank
Mrs.
you, Chief.
Voter, you are also welcome. We'd like to have you on screen. Yes,
Thank
there you are,
you.
man. You are welcome. We're happy to have you as well. And I'm sure this
Thank
is going
you.
to be a very, very interesting, stroke engaging session.
I
Okay,
believe
so
so.
thank you so much. Tutu, I will start with you to take the first question, if you don't mind. I'll start with you. Or let me start with Ovota. Ovota, can I start with you if you're fine? Let me start with you.
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you very much. This is the first question, and we are going into the very first segment, which is the opening segment. We want to really analyze the gap in terms of leadership effectiveness. And Ms. Ovota, this is your question. From your work with organizations across Nigeria, how common is it for your managers to be promoted primarily on technical merit rather than leadership readiness? And what does that typically cost the business?
Okay. Well, this is extremely common. I mean, people work
Okay, please.
hard based on their technical skills, and therefore they're really promoted on their technical skills. And
Okay.
whether it is in financial services that have worked, whether it is in fast moving consumer goods, oil and gas, the promotion logic is always familiar. People get
Mm,
promoted on their technical skills and on what they have done. So
okay.
that's familiar.
Fantastic.
However, okay, although this is good, the fact of the matter is that, most people become leaders when they're promoted. And that
Correct.
leadership element is missing. And this assumption that it is a person that does the best work always that will be promoted without that leadership element costs the organization something.
Mm,
It costs the organization. And one of the most significant costs to the organization is the team disengagement. Team
mm,
disengagement, because when someone is technically strong but leadership unprepared, you find that high performers in that team, right, will begin to feel as if they have other options because that person is
mm,
trying to, continue to show his technical powers, his technical best. The new leader, he's not taking on, and I've seen this happen in a lot of banks that have even worked for, where someone is promoted, he's great at marketing, he goes out there, he brings in millions, and that's what he's still doing. He leaves
wow.
his team to fend for themselves. And so he
Mm,
doesn't put in developing them. He doesn't do the manager thing he should do, the role of leading, the role of developing. And so those people become disengaged. And very soon, the people that are very competent will find other jobs. And this is a subtle thing that happens. It's not always obvious, but it is present. And then the
mm,
next thing that we also see is that the manager, no matter how wonderful, his work is, he what I call capability stagnation happens.
mm,
Okay. And what I mean is that this team stops growing because the manager is so consumed with doing rather than also investing. Again, it's about developing his people. So that
mm,
capability stagnation happens. And then you see that people are saying, well, honestly, if this is what, what I'm going to be getting, then I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere else. And I'll tell you, very competent people always have somewhere to go.
wow.
So they always have somewhere to go. So the cost is that, loss of productivity happens. And when that loss of
Mm,
productivity happens, it happens during that gap period when that person is trying to get his feet on of becoming a manager, which should have even happened. That's why some organizations,
mm,
they send people to what we call new manager school. They teach them apart from their technical skills, they teach them how to be managers. So these
Perfect.
new managers learn the rudiments of leadership. They learn the rudiments of management. So they should learn it before they take on the role. So I think this is a gap that needs to be filled in most organizations. I remember in one bank, you know, the revenue impact ran into millions because
Wow.
of leadership unreadiness. And it's more than a soft issue now. It is something that organizations should really think about, of developing somebody that they want to train before they get into that leadership role. They need to help them to learn those rudiments, to help them as they get there to manage their people. People are important. You can't, because he's technically competent, put him there and then neglect your people. So I think I'll leave it there. Then we can ask
Thank
questions
you
later.
very much. Quite explosive, absolutely explosive. Thank you very, very much for tackling these questions. And part of the things that struck me with your response is that it is extremely common to have people promoted into technical roles, and then they are expected to grope their way into succeeding as leaders
Absolutely.
without training. And one of the things you highlighted are the cost of this kind of move without proper preparation is that there is a loss in productivity, okay, while the person is trying to find his way across, the new role. And then, of course, there is a loss of talent because people become disengaged under this leader who is not even sure of his left from his right. And then the last one is the loss of finance. There's a financial loss. Okay. And so these are three things that are very critical as a result of this gap. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for that response.
And
All
I
right.
want to chime in for a bit, just
Okay.
for a second. Yeah. And I think the reason why this thing persists is because it's easy. You already have a performer, you already have this person who has done well as an individual contributor. So it's just easy to advance them to the next line. So
Next
what we
level.
find is that organizations are not willing to put in the hard work to
Yeah.
identify people who can actually not just survive, but thrive and enjoy the work of managing the team. It's just easy to move
Absolutely.
quickly along to the next box. So if there was something, if there was a lesson for organizations in what Mrs. Yamu has said, is that you need to actually put in the work of developing your team members and then identifying those that you can advance to the next level. It's not always a one size fits all for everyone.
All right. Thank you very much, Tutu, for that contribution with regards to the question. And I'm coming to you next. It's important from what you have said for organizations to be deliberate in developing future leaders, not to throw them into the deep waters and expect them to either swim or drown. That drowning can actually cost the business a lot. All right. Thank you so much for that. So, Tutu, I'm coming to you now for your question. How do you advise organizations then to build leadership readiness into their promotion and succession processes?
Honestly, I think that's a great segue into the contribution I just made. You have to have
Exactly.
your parameters, what is the framework you are using for your people to be able to grow into the position you want them to handle. There's one thing, it's one thing to have your technical competencies, and globally, people are very clear on their technical competencies. What we struggle with as organizations is the behavioral and leadership competencies. So the same amount of work that has been put into defining and articulating your technical competencies, you need to put in that same amount of work into defining your leadership and behavioral competencies, how you want your people to behave, how you want them to speak, how you want them to act, how you want them to manage their teams. Because without that, then people are doing what we call native sense. They just do what it is they feel works, what they've seen other people do. And that's why year in, year out, we continue to see bad behavior in organizations, because people see people who are yelling, who are lacking in emotional intelligence, but they keep advancing. And so people think, okay, maybe this is the way to do it. One, those people haven't had any, what's the word? Any discipline or, any punitive I don't like that word punitive, but that's the one that comes to my mind right now. They haven't had any punitive consequences, and so people just feel, okay, if this is what this guy does and it's working, if this is what this lady does and it's working, then maybe that's the way to go about it. So to be able to counteract that, people need to actually map out, their competencies, not just technical, but behavioral and leadership, because without that, it doesn't matter how brilliant you are going to be killing the army that is doing the work, and you'll get,
Right.
to the top and you realize, oh my goodness, everyone is dead just
Hmm.
because of who managed them.
Thank you very much, Tutu, for that response. As a matter of fact, you have just opened our eyes again to the importance of having a competency framework rather than focusing on technical competencies alone, to appoint people into leadership role. It will be important to look at, like you have said, the behavioral competencies as well and the leadership competencies. And then to also invest in the development of these competencies, like you said, so that the people come into that role prepared, to build their army and to ensure that that army is able to scale the business. Thank you very much for that. Still looking at the competency gap or looking at the leadership gap, Mrs. Ovota, I am coming to you again. When you walk into an organization and observe how managers interact with their team, what tells you immediately whether it's authority or influence in the domain leadership currency in that culture? Sorry, I'll take that question again. When you walk into an organization and observe how managers interact with their team, what tells you immediately whether authority or influence is the dominant leadership currency in that culture?
Okay. Surprisingly, you can see it fast. If you are primed to see that kind of thing, you'll be able to see it, whether culture runs on authority or whether it runs on influence, you'll be able to tell quickly. And the signal shows up less in what the leader says. You would find that it is more in how the people around them behave. So you would be able to tell, for instance, in a meeting or maybe in a gathering, who speaks and how freely they speak, okay? In an authority dominant culture, right? People wait to be called on. And we all know, we've all worked in organizations, we've all seen it. When they make contribution, team members are cautious if it's an authority led culture, and they're aligned with whatever the leader has implied. Sometimes he hasn't even said it, he has just implied it, so they're aligned with that. And again, silence is quite common. When the leader speaks, people are quiet. But in an influence dominant culture, people volunteer ideas, they build on each other's ideas, even respectfully challenge the leader. Okay, there's energy. And, there's overlap in conversation because there's energy, they're excited. Okay, so if the room freezes after the leader talks, authority is in charge.
Wow.
Authority is in charge. And also, you might also see it in what happens when someone disagrees with the leader. Okay, disagreement in an authority dominant culture is indirect. It's deferred. They want to take it offline, that kind of thing. They say maybe we can consider. They have some words that they use. You watch the body language. We've all been in Nigeria about one leader that they always watch his body language, right? You have those side glances, hesitation. But when it's an influence dominant culture, disagreement is visible, direct, it's safe. People debate ideas without fear of personal consequences. If disagreements lower the temperature in a room, authority dominates. Authority dominates. If it raises thinking, then influence dominates.
Fantastic.
And then another thing you want to look at is ownership language. Where you have people that say, my idea, my team, my decision, I approved XYZ is a dominant culture. And in an
Okay.
influence culture, you're talking about, we decide, this is our approach as a team. The pronouns reveal the structure.
Mm.
And then you also know also when how mistakes are handled. If there's a blame culture, it means that people are hiding, they're justifying, they're explaining, they're deflecting. But where you have influence, people surface issues early. And in
Wow.
fact, they even proffer solutions because
Right.
they learn that it's not, oh, this is how we went wrong. And this is what we thought we would do to correct it. What do you think to the leader?
Mm.
Right? So
Mm.
learning is visible. And again, you find that leaders' behavior in the room also signal whether there's authority in the room or whether it is influence. Okay. Does the leader talk more than he listens? Okay. Um, Closes topic quickly. When he disagrees, he shuts things down, evaluates ideas immediately. When there's influence, when influence is dominant, you ask more questions. You build
Mm.
on other people's idea. You leave space after questions, for questions, sorry. And so it's free. So the thing about all this is that alignment is fast, but is often shallow when you have authority. You want people
Mm.
to be aligned and you make those decisions quickly, and people comply quickly. But when you want people to commit, it takes more time. And in an
True.
influence-led organization, it takes time. And people commit, they just don't comply because they understand where it's come and they're part of that decision making and they're part of that team building, they're part of that, discussion. So that commitment is whole and it's real. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love the way you dissected this particular area across different perspectives, particularly the characteristics of a dominant leader or a dominant manager and an influential leader. One of the things that struck me from what you said is that in a dominant environment, everyone is looking for the body language of the leader, of the manager, and they are also not very free to speak. They are waiting to get the signal to speak. They don't
Yeah.
ask questions, they
Mm.
just take instructions. And then, of course, they are not free to challenge authority respectfully. That is completely different from what you have in an influential leadership environment. And of course, in an influential environment, the energy level is extremely high. I also like the fact that you talked about ownership, and you also mentioned the fact that the pronouns tells you a lot. When you hear things like I, that sounds more like a position dominant environment. And then if you hear things like we are, then that is an influential dominant environment. So thank you very much for sharing that. Tutu, I'm coming back to you on this.
Thank
What
you,
is that
Chidi.
one thing you wish someone had told you about the difference between
Ah,
being a, can you hear me?
I can go ahead.
All right. What is that one thing you wish someone had told you about the difference between being a great individual contributor and being a great manager before you took your first leadership role?
Honestly, I love that question because it's a question that I think everybody here would be able to relate. And I think the biggest thing
Okay.
that I wish I had been told was it's a whole new different game. Being an individual contributor is a different animal entirely than being someone who is now leading and managing a team. Because the mindset needs to change completely. Before you are just
Mm.
this person, you are bothered only about your own work, your own speed, your own expertise. I'm done, here it is. But now you can't say I'm done. You have to make sure that you are coordinating
Everyone else.
everyone. So I think that is the biggest thing um, I really wish I had. And I think it might even be unfair to say maybe I wasn't told, but there's just a difference between being told and having it as a lived experience, because it's one thing somebody tells you, oh, the mindset has to change. Now you're managing people. No matter how much they tell you, it's a different thing when you actually now start walking in those shoes, where you are now expected to be the one enabling the team, the one clearing the block so that they can get to do the work, the one who is putting everybody on track, making sure that everyone has the clarity, they understand what it is that is required of them. I always remember that example, where President John F. Kennedy went to the NASA Center, and I'm sure a lot of the people in the audience would have read about this as well. And he saw a janitor in the corridor, and he asked the janitor, "What do you do here?" And the man said, "I am helping put a man on the moon by so date." He was very clear, because he knew that, look, if any of these people, if any of these, what do they call them again? These guys who go into space, if any of these guys fall down in this corridor because there's water,
Astronauts.
astronauts, thank you. I was going to say astrologists, but I knew that wasn't the correct one. Astronauts, thank you, Mrs. I. If any of these astronauts fall down here because the floor is wet, or, there's a lot of clutter, we are set back, So somebody had taken the time to actually take this guy through how he fits into the big picture. So those are the things I wish I had really been much more grounded in. So I do believe that is the big difference, at least for me, and possibly for a lot of people on the audience or in the audience today.
All right. Thank you very much, Tutu. I like the part that you mentioned. It's a different thing to know and to have that lived experience, because each time we keep telling people, it's a different ball game when you have to lead people and then when you have to walk on your own. A lot of people don't come in.
Sorry, I want to agree with what you just said,
Go
because
ahead,
it reminded me of when I became a manager too.
Okay.
It's so different when you actually do it, because I went through new manager school and we were told that we were led, but when you actually get, people are hanging on your every word, and they're also gauging you. So you're put in different, roles, because they are seeing whether or not you can do it, whether you feel, whether you're worthy of their time. So there's so many things that you psychologically are thinking, oh, I have to get this right. I have to, So you're playing, there's so much psychology in terms of your mind going on. And you want to do well. You want to do it right. But what you rely on is your technical skills. So again, moving into that transition of leadership, you now remember, oh, I have to do this. And then you begin to do this. So that was my own experience. So I completely agree. Doing it is different.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing. And you see, it is even better that you are trained. It makes the doing much easier than for you to jump into this kind of scenario without any form of direction or any form of training. Experience. Okay. And so on that note, we have come to the end of the first segment, and we'll quickly take a poll before we go into the second segment of this conversation. I want to believe that my audience are having fun. There's a question in the chat. I would leave that question until we get to the Q&A session. Very, very interesting question that Ojawale had highlighted. When we get to the Q&A session, I'm sure my panelists are going to dissect the question. Now, I will leave this over to Uju. She has a poll she would like us to see and participate in, and then we'll be able to see exactly how we are all thinking in view of the topic on leadership. All right, Uju, over to you. Uju, we are waiting for the poll. Are you there? Okay. I want to believe you can see the poll because I can see it from here. Leadership Masterclass is what you see. The question there is simple. How will the people on your team describe your leadership style? This is a self-assessment mode. All right. And we want you to tell us what you think your people see. And we need you to give us one answer. Do they follow my instruction closely? Do they come to me with problems and I solve them? Do they figure things out, but I guide them? And of course, I am honestly not sure what people are thinking about my leadership style. That would be the last option. So let us do that. And the poll is going to run for a few more seconds. Going. I have 40% participated. So if I can get to 75% participation in the pool, we will lock the pool. I have 45% participation so far. Yes, if you know that you are in the room, you're listening to my voice, and you have not participated in the poll, please do so. I have only 45% participation. Once I get to 75%, we will close the poll. So if you have not add your view in regards to the question, how will the people on your team describe your leadership style right now? Not in future, not what you wish, what it is at the moment. Okay? We have 50% participation so far. Yes, we are waiting for you. Okay, 54% participation. 54% participation. What is your view? How do you think people perceive your leadership style? All right, I have over 60% now, over 60%. We are getting close. I will stop at 70. We are very, very close now. Yes, going, and gone. Would you please, can you close the poll and let's see what the score or the result is? Please, can we close the poll and let's share the report? Okay, I'm quite happy no one picked item number 1, which is they follow my instruction closely. Nobody in the room. But I have a 38% who said they come to me with problems and I solve them. Interesting stuff. And we have those who says about 54% who says they figure things out, but I guide them. And the last one, which is just 8%, says, you know what? At this stage, I don't even know. All right, and I'm sure at some point my panelists are going to speak, to this outcome. What exactly are our thoughts? Because this outcome tells you who you are as a leader. Okay, and if I look at item 1, 2, and 3, which of them is the most influential leader, or the one that is working based on position and authority? Okay, which of them between 1, 2, and 3? All right, between 1, 2, and 3. And which of them is the best style of leadership between 1, 2, and 3? Of course, we are not working with 4, and I'm sure our panelists will be addressing this when the time comes. All right, we'll go into the second segment now. And thank you very much for your responses in segment 1. We'll be looking at authority versus influence. Authority versus influence. And Tutu, will start with you again. Now, how do you convince a CEO or a CFO to invest in influence-based leadership or influence-based leadership development for their line managers? Because a lot of organization focuses majorly on technical competencies and technical skills. How do we now convince them that, look, this thing called leadership influence is extremely important? How do we convince them, to invest in it? Tutu?
Thank you, Shehu. I think the first thing we all need to understand when we are going to our CEOs, CFOs with requests of this kind is we must speak the language of the business. In every organization, bar none, except maybe for very few, maybe I shouldn't say bar none, for very few, where HR has distinguished themselves, most organizations, and especially accounts, they see HR as a cost center, And so the trick to bring them to your own side of the divide is to speak their language, is to talk about cost versus benefit, is to talk about the things that matter to the business. If you just say, oh, I want to do a leadership training for our managers, so what? How does that translate to Naira and Kobo for the organization? But if you are able to take empirical proof, to these people and show them what is the cost of bad leadership, what is it costing us? What is it costing us in terms of Naira and Kobo? People are leaving, and research has proven that the cost of replacing people who have left, you are paying 2-3 times, sometimes more, to replace that person who has left. That is Naira and Kobo. Then reputational damage, because when people are doing their due diligence about if they want to join your organization or not, that data point is there for them to look at as well, that, wow, this unit you are going to, there's this person there, Somebody shared a story of how, and this was in a leadership training we had recently with a CEO and his, direct reports. And one of the executives there shared how when someone was brought in to head a department, the entire, not 1, 2, or 3, the entire department resigned.
Wow.
The entire department resigned. And that just tells you the kind of culture that was running in that organization. And so we need to be able to take these things, these data points, and couch it in the language that the business will understand. And the language of business is always Naira and Kobo. So you give them what they want, and then you can hide what they need there. What they want to hear is a Naira and Kobo impact of this decision you want them to make. So as long as you are able to show that to them, if we're able to train these people, they can manage the team better. We have longer retention, attrition is reduced. We don't have to be, going back to the market to try and, once you're able to paint that picture for them, then the CEO is a bit more open, or maybe even a lot more open to what it is you want them to the decision it is you want them to take. So ultimately, HR really needs to understand not just the language of the people, but the language of the business, and to be able to frame it accordingly.
All right. Tutu, thank you very much. That was quite explicit. I like the fact that you mentioned language. Everything's about speaking the right language. The kind of people we are talking to as CEOs and CFOs are interested in numbers. So we must understand how leadership translates in numbers according to what you have mentioned. You also said that we need to use empirical data. In other words, predictive analytics to be able to show the benefits above whatever cost that the leadership development program is going to consume. So thank you very much for that contribution. I'm going to you, Mrs. Iyamo. Are you with me? Mrs. Ovota, are you with me?
I am.
All right. Now, what happens when a manager is highly competent but emotionally disconnected from their team? What happens?
Wow.
When a manager is highly competent but emotionally disconnected from their team?
Okay, so we call this kind of person a brilliant vacuum. Okay, he is wonderful at what he does. He's great at what he does, but honestly, his technical work, again, almost like the other one, his technical work isolates him from his people. Okay. His technical competence, I would say, isolates him from his team. Because that connection with a team is very important. Teaming is about working together. But if you're brilliant and you just want to be shining on your own, then you're not connecting with the people that you're supposed to be working with to help you deliver on what the organization wants you to deliver. So it is good that he's bright, but the fact of it is that his competence becomes an asset and a ceiling at the same time for him. Right? So people look to him for direction, but they stop contributing. Their own, they don't think for themselves again, because, there's an emotional distance, and that emotional distance creates that vacuum that should be there for them to engage, to interact, to innovate, to build. It's not there. So psychologically, what happens is that safety net that is around collapses, and when that happens, the highest performing teams, like they say, are not the ones with the best talent. They are not. They're ones that the individuals within the teams can work together to deliver on the promises they've made to the organization, for that team to deliver. Those are the ones. They share ideas, admit mistakes, they challenge assumptions. So a manager who is emotionally disconnected, no matter how competent he is, cannot create that environment. So that's one of the things we have to understand, that, yeah, you can be a manager, you can be very competent, but if you cannot create the right environment, then you've lost out on so much that you can gain, even for your own self as a manager. Okay.
Fantastic.
So in Nigeria, you find that this pattern is common, and it's often something that is masked as somebody who is good in numbers. We keep promoting those same people, but their team is disconnected, and they find that the manager is hitting his targets, therefore appears successful. But the problem is that attrition sets in. The people start leaving, okay? And then when they are leaving and you ask them why they're going, most of them will tell you, well, we're leaving because, we don't know that this is the best place for us. We don't know that our skills and our talents are useful here. That saying that people leave organizations, they leave not because of but because of their managers.
Absolutely.
It's so true. It's so true. So this is what someone who is quite disconnected will bring to the table. The value he gives is just for himself. It's not for the team. And if he's not emotionally connected to his people, there'll be a problem, not just for him, but for the team and for the organization. That's a bigger picture.
Wow.
That's a bigger picture for the organization. The organization will lose otherwise brilliant people that should be developing and growing under him. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution.
I want to chime into this very quickly.
All right, please go for it.
And I have a question for the audience. Just very quickly, 30 seconds or less. Drop in the chat, what is the number one job of your brain? If you know the answer, some of you may know the answer already. So just drop in the chat. What is the number one job of your brain? What is the number one job of your brain? And I can tell you now, it's not thinking, it's not decision making, because some people will write that. So let me just let you know that's not what it is. So what is the number one job of your brain? Your brain does many, many things, but what is the number one job of your brain? So I'd like to see the chat rolling now, just so I can have a variety of responses, and then I can let the cat out of the bag.
Okay.
Come on, everybody. I see how many? I see two. Let's have two responses. Yeah, let's have a couple more. Let's have several more responses. Don't be afraid.
Say it, even if you think, yeah, take the risk.
Exactly. What is the number one job of your brain? And this is a question I really like, because it segues so nicely with what Mrs. I has said. Okay, nice. Safety, ensure survival. What's the question again? What is the number one job of your brain? What is the number one job of your brain? Survival, to live, and for safety. I love these responses because they are all on point. The number one job of your brain is to keep you alive. And so when somebody is emotionally disconnected from their team, what then happens is the team may not feel safe. That psychological safety that enables the team to speak up, that enables the team to openly and honestly share when maybe they don't agree with you, it's going to be missing. And if a team is not feeling safe, you think of yourself. If you don't feel safe in an environment, you are not fully present there. You are scanning, you are checking, is it safe for me? So it means if your team is not feeling safe, they are not fully present on the job. 50% of their brain matter is scanning the environment for any danger coming from an angry boss or something. And so that connection we have is really how we've been socialized, over the years. And so if it's missing, then it really does impact how the team will come together, the kind of work they'll be able to do. You know, I love what Mrs. Yamu said. It's not the brightest people who perform the best. It's people who feel safe, you know, to be able to
To
speak up,
connect, yeah.
to connect. Exactly. So I just thought it was important to share that as well. Thank you, Shiv.
Thank you very much, Tutu, for bringing in psychological safety into the equation and how that influences the team's performance. There's a word Yamu used I love so much. She said brilliant vacuum. Brilliant vacuum. You can be so brilliant, yet there is a vacuum within what is required for the organization to succeed. And there's another point that was made that it's possible for you to have talents in your team and they are underperforming. All right. And the missing link is still this link of emotional intelligence. So the highest performing team is not always the most talented. And of course, people leave organizations, sorry, they leave their line managers, not necessarily their organization. So thank you very much for that. Okay, Tutu, I have a question for you now. And it's in line with what you've just started in the conversation. How does a manager's behavior influence employee motivation and performance? I know you have already started giving responses in that regard, but I would like you to tie it up nicely with regard to motivation and performance.
Yeah. I honestly, Shehu, I love the way you just said with these questions. I think I heard something somewhere. I can't remember where I heard it, but it's an apt response here. People don't experience the organization; they experience you, the line manager, whoever it is you are. You are the atmosphere for them within that organization. And so the way you communicate to them, the way you respond when there are mistakes made, or even when there are victories won, those things will actually affect how the team is going to either be motivated or otherwise, you know. What kind of mindset do you have about your team? Do you have what's the word now? Do you have a growth mindset about the team? Do you believe that your team can perform? Do you trust them? Because the way you relate to people when you trust them is completely different from when you relate to them if you don't trust them. Those are they are parallel lines that will never meet in terms of how you relate to the team and how the team is going to be experiencing you. And you know, so that behavior is going to influence the team either positively or negatively. And so in these days where we have, you know, different types of generations in the workplace, you know, for the older people, maybe this is normal for them, people who are very command control kind of thing. But for the younger people who question everything now, who need to know why, who are digital natives, the approach needs to be slightly different. So it's no longer a one size fits all. You need to be able to know who you are dealing with, what is the best way to reach them, how can I best motivate them, you know, so you are customizing your approach to team members. Now, there are certain things that will cut across everyone. Respect for the individual will cut across for everyone. A lack of respect is definitely not going to go over well, no matter who it is, you know. And so just being able to know what are those general tenets, you know, that will help me get the best from my team. This is what you need to be practicing. And then for each individual, what works best. Some people need you to give them a bit more attention than others. Some don't really care for the attention, you know. So getting to know your team, getting to know how best to bring the best out of them. These are the things that will influence employee motivation and performance.
Okay.
Fantastic, Tutu. Thank you very much.
Just a quick one. The manager must just learn how to wear different hats. You know?
Okay.
He has to, you know, people think, I'm going to, you know, when you start, it's like you're overwhelmed. Am I going to be a doctor, lawyer, everything at once to my team? Yes. Yes, but you have to do it, you know, in a strategic way, and not everyone needs everything at the same time. And it just takes knowing your people and learning to understand them so that you can deploy whatever you need to help support them. And that's what makes a great manager, you know, intuition, getting that. I mean, It's just like a family member, a mother. She has so many kids. They have different talents. They have different issues, needs. But, she tunes into them, especially when they need the different things. And we're human beings. God has created us and gifted us with this beautiful talent of being able to think and have that connection with people. And I think we haven't used it enough in the managerial area, but we need to use it more. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that contribution. Tutu started by saying people experience you, not the organization. And of course, you are the atmosphere that they connect with. If you make that atmosphere toxic, people will leave you. If you make it, friendly and healthy, people will produce on that. And how we communicate and respond is extremely important. And Mrs. Obota had also added to that by saying that we must learn to wear different hats. We are many things as line managers to our team members, and we must know what hat to use appropriately. So thank you very much for that. We'll be going very quickly into the general question and answer session. But Tutu, sorry, I'll come to you again, but I'll take this question for Iyamu for the last round, because we're about going into the last segment. So Mrs. Ovota, can I take the next question? We'll take this and then we will jump into the question and answer session. How do you coach managers to separate legitimate resistance from destructive insubordination? How do you coach managers to separate legitimate resistance from destructive insubordination? Did you get my question now? You are muted. You may need to unmute yourself.
I was muted. Yes. Okay. Honestly, one of the things that we need to understand about this is that, people do not resist because they want to resist. So there are times when you have to specifically, kind of divorce the issue that they are talking about, whether it's legitimate, it has merit, from their behavior, which may be disruptive, which may be, cause chaos within the team. So there are times that they want to be seen and they want to be heard and they want to say what they feel to the team leader. And this may not always be a situation in which we as leaders, and I know even for myself, sometimes we can put ourselves, in a position where we are feeling as if we are being insulted. Let me put it that way, okay? Where we are feeling unhappy about what is being said to us. But the first thing that I would tell managers is don't make it about you. It's not about you, okay? When someone pushes back, it's very easy, especially for an authority-driven manager, to see it as a personal challenge. Like I said before, that was my default, and I had to work overtime to change that. It's not everyone that challenges your authority because they want to challenge your authority, okay? There are times that they have a legitimate need or they want something and they're speaking to you about it. It's for you to know the difference. A legitimate resistance usually has some clear signs. It is specific. What they're saying, is it specific? Is it focusing on the issue, not the person? Is it right? Is it within the right channel? Are they putting it through the right channel? So even if you don't have to hear what they're saying, don't make it about you. Make it about understanding what that person wants to say. And if someone says, I have concerns about this approach and here is why, that's not a problem. You have an asset there, someone who is an asset. Okay, because you're listening to that concern that that person has. And that's someone who is engaged. They're saying it because they care enough about the team. They care enough about the direction that you're going for them to speak up. Okay. Correct. So your job as a manager in that moment is simply to listen, to ask questions, and then decide not shut it down. Okay.
Okay.
Now, a disruptive insubordination is different. That's different. Okay. It's not about improving outcome. It's about undermining you. It's about undermining the team. So, and you see it in things like rallying others against a decision you've made, openly challenging authority in an unproductive way, right? Or refusing to follow through on a clear and reasonable direction. I remember once I had somebody who was, quite insubordinate, if I could put it that way. And, we had, it was such a wonderful meeting. At the end of it, we're now finishing the meeting. And this person got up and said, I don't agree because, every time it's only people that, do X, Y, Z that listen. No, he's going into personal issues and even at bringing it at the end to disrupt everything we've agreed. So maybe during the time everybody was talking, he was festering in his wounds instead of speaking at that point.
Correct.
So that is obviously disruptive, and you can deal with it differently. You can deal with it dealing with exactly what he has said, which is what I did, exactly what he has said, looking for the content of his disagreement, dealing with that, having the team talk through that, and then later on dealing with his behavior. Outside of that, dealing with his behavior, which was disruptive. Okay. So it's very important that we don't mix the two things together. So the practical rule is separate the conversation, because there are people who really want to help the team, really want to promote what you want in their team, but there are people who also want to undermine the team. So when you combine the two, you don't handle it well. Okay. So that balance is what strong leadership looks like. Learning how to balance, learning how to manage it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Absolutely spot on. I like the fact that you said this has to be dissected. It has to be separated. Separate the core issue from the behavior. And one other thing you mentioned that is quite striking for me is that we must learn to strike a balance. That is what makes us line managers or effective leaders within the organization. So for those of us who have questions, this is the time we may need to be putting the questions in the chat. I will ask Tutu one more question and would like to get the response as quickly as we can because we're already behind schedule. We are hoping that with the other questions that come, we should be out of here within the next 20 minutes thereabout. Okay, Tutu would like you to take this question. What does it take for a manager to genuinely move from a scarcity mindset, protecting their position, to an abundance mindset, investing in other growth?
Mindset. I would say having a growth mindset.
Correct.
You can't be that manager who is afraid that your people will outshine you, which is what we see a lot of. We have managers and leaders in quote who withhold information. They want to be able to swoop in and be the knight in shining armor. They have the God complex, the Messiah complex. They want to be seen as the know-it-all, and so they hold back information so that the team will always need to come back to them. That is a scarcity mindset, and the way out of that may not necessarily be knowing that there's something called a growth mindset. You may be experiencing it. You may be realizing that the success of the team is also your success. When your team succeeds, you are the one who looks good. You are actually the one who takes credit for that because you are the one managing that team, So until people in authority, whether you are a manager, whether you are a partner, whether you are a GM anywhere, when you begin to realize that, look, my team succeeding actually looks good on me, that is the time you begin to realize, okay, there's no need to keep staying down here in this scarcity mindset. I can actually then become, like that phrase, the wind beneath their wings, where I'm enabling them, I'm giving them the tools they need. And when you invest in people that way, and I challenge everyone to think about the one person or the two or several people, if you're lucky, who have actually done that for you. What is the impact it has had on you? What is the impact it has had on your relationship with that person? You know, when that person has had a growth mindset, when that person has felt, oh, you know, I want to pour into this person. I want to help them be all they can be. I want to help them be the best they can be, as against somebody who just sees you as, you know, a tool that I want to keep. You know, even when you are good, they feel you are going to be my secret weapon. I don't want other people to know you are this good. I want to keep you hidden so that you are the one who is going to be helping me look good. So for me, there's a book I'm going to recommend. It's called Mindset by Carol Dweck. You know, I'm going to ask you to drop that in the chat. Exactly. Mindset by Carol Dweck, you know, so that you begin to realize that there's a different way to manage your team. You can actually help them be all they can be, and it doesn't impact. In fact, it impacts you, but positively, not negatively. So I hope that answers your question, Shay.
Thank you very much for wrapping this up very nicely, talking about the fact that we don't need to be afraid if our team members outshine us. As a matter of fact, it is a testament of our good leadership if our team members does even better than us, because they are working for us. And it also shows that we have invested in them. Thank you very much, Aditutu, and thank you very much, Mrs. Ovota. While I allow my panelists to catch their breath, and then we are gathering the questions. I can see the questions are coming in the chat. Would you like to play something? Would like to show you things that we do in Human Capital Partners to be able to address some of these concerns and some of these challenges with regards to leadership and how far we have come as an organization. Would you over to you? All right. Now, become a future leader, ready leader in today's fast-changing world. Okay, we have a program that we intend to get you on board. That program is going to come very soon, and these are the key highlights of the program. All right. Uju, can you hear me? I think it's gone off the screen again. Okay. All right, while I wait for Uju to organize that, I will begin to take the questions. Okay. Uju, we can't hear a sound. No sound.
But
Okay.
there's no sound. It's a landing page. So maybe you can walk it through. I'll share the link in the chat feed.
Okay. All right. So there's the link to this. And this is a program. Please, can you go up? Let's look at the topic. Become a future leader. All right. Please go up, Uju. I'm not done with that. Become a future leader in today's fast-changing business world. So you need to register for our executive leadership series designed for high-performing professionals ready to elevate their influence, decision-making, and strategic leadership. A link will be posted in the chat. We expect you to click on it. All right, but these are the key highlights. We have live expert-led session. We have practical leadership framework, and then certificate of participation. Now, what are you going to learn? We expect you to be able to learn and, of course, to be able to practice advanced leadership framework for modern organizations. Tools will be handed over to you to lead your teams through uncertainty and change. And then there's going to be practical mentorship and coaching techniques that will also be handed over to us. So there are things you are going to learn in class and you'll be able to take it outside of the training environment. We also expect that you'll be able to strategize for influence and, of course, influence stakeholders at different levels. And a lot of real-world cases are going to be applied in the session. Now, mid-level to senior level managers are the people to attend. Team leads and departmental heads are also participants to attend. We are also expecting HR strategy and operation professionals to be part of this program. If you are in the public sector, you are a director, you are an administrator, this program is for you. And then, of course, high potential professionals preparing for leadership role. Okay, so if you are a hypo, you've been identified as a high potential within your organization and you are being groomed or prepared for leadership role, this is for you. The opportunity is limited, so I'd like you to click on the link and then jump on board. These are the features of the program, of the courses that we have: developing agile leadership, agile leadership skills and competencies. This one is going to be coming up on the 6th to 8th of July 2026. So you can click to find out more about the course. All right. We also have strategic leadership and change management course. This will be coming up between the 24th and the 26th of August 2026. All right. And then, of course, we have the fundamentals of mentorship for leaders. This will be coming up between 10th to 11th of August 2026. So we'll be expecting to see you. Just click on the link and then you subscribe for one of those courses. One of the beauty of our courses is that it brings people from different fields and then, of course, from different proficiency level, such that you are also interacting and networking with people across industry. So that will be very, very interesting and take away from the program. So to book a corporate consultation, you can always click on that link and then someone from Human Capital Partners will talk to you. Okay, thank you very much, Uju. We are coming back to the question and answer session now. Now, the very first question I have here, and any of my panelists can actually jump on that. Okay, Mrs. Ovota, probably I'll throw this question to you. What happened in an environment where, as the new general manager for operations, the existing team and structure in terms of reporting line are deliberately resisting you that is mandated to fix whatever problem you are there to fix? So that's the question that is asked by Ojawale. I don't know if you get the question. Yes.
Let me summarize what I'm understanding. A new GM came in, and then there are people there already, and they are working actively to undermine you.
Correct.
Is that it? Okay. So what happens? Okay. I think first of all, that new GM needs to call the team and talk to them about what his vision is and what his style is, and may assure them that they can work together as a team. They have to trust him. There must be trust. There must be clarity in understanding what he wants to deliver. There must also be, there should not be any ambiguity at all in how he tends to work with them. Now, once he has done that, and if it continues, then it's no longer about, I talked about addressing the behavior, okay?
Correct.
Then he needs to now begin to look at the people who are the ringleaders and have a one-to-one what we call difficult conversation with them.
Correct.
He needs to sit down with them and have that difficult conversation and address the issues as he sees it, and then give them an opportunity to correct how they behave. Now, if they don't correct that, then it now
Mrs. Obota, I think you're frozen. I can't hear her. I don't know if it's from my end. I want to believe that.
And if their behavior continues to undermine, then he needs to make sure that it becomes an appraisal issue. As we would say, quote unquote.
All right. Thank you very much for that response. I like the first point you made there. This person needs to communicate as one of your first mandate joining a new team. You have to state your vision clearly, your style of leadership, and of course, build trust and establish clarity. And then, of course, if that doesn't work, then we are looking at a behavioral challenge here, and we may need to start having very difficult conversation. Thank you very much for that point. And I would like Ojawale to respond in the chat if this has met your expectation or your question has been answered. I have another question here, and this question is from Chidebere. This question is from Chidebere. How should leaders manage high performers? who deliver results but negatively impact team culture? Tutu, I'll direct this question to you. How should
Okay.
leaders manage high performers who deliver results, but these people have negative impact on the culture?
And what immediately comes to mind is a bad apple spoils the whole batch or spoils the whole barrel, as they said. And this is the tragedy of certain organizations, because we continue to harbor very high performing individuals who are destroying, the team through whatever that behavior, whatever the destructive behavior is. And so it's a very, what's the word now? It's a very myopic approach to managing the team, a very myopic approach to getting results. You will get results. You are getting results in the short term, but what is happening long term? What are you doing? What is the impact of this behavior on your team? One, people see that this thing is welcomed. It is not being addressed. And so people begin to believe that, okay, this is how to act. And so before you know it, you have a whole organization full of people who are behaving this way and having negative impact on your culture. Secondly, you then realize that you may be running a culture where people then realize that it's a, what's the word now? It's a dog eat dog kind of thing, and ultimately a house divided itself will not stand, and at the end of the people, those results that you thought you were getting, it will come to an end. It will taper out, it will crash out. And so, what do you want to do? You want to address that behavior. If indeed it conflicts with your culture, you want to address that behavior and say, look, we appreciate that you are getting results. However, we would like you to see the impact of what you are doing and see better, different ways of getting those results. And you need to be checking in so that people realize there's no free lunch. You can't keep doing this thing and expect that you will not be facing the consequences of it.
Correct. Thank you very much, Tutu. What I hear you say in summary is consequence management is critical here, and rewards. What you reward will drive the behavior. So how do we reward the right behavior we would like to see in people? Thank you very much for that.
And Shehu, just to chime in, sometimes people are so entrenched in this behavior that they need help with it. They are not going to be able to change on their own. So you may need to send them, you may need to get them a coach, because training is 2 days, 3 days. Yeah, they get the information cerebrally, but how will it translate? So this is the kind of person you may get a coach to work with them.
Interesting. Thank you very much for bringing the coaching dynamics into the conversation, Tutu. All right. I have another question from Chidebere, and Mrs. Ovota, I will throw this question to you. He said, in a matrix or cross-functional environment, what practical strategies help leaders lead beyond authority without creating ambiguity or conflict?
Okay. I saw that question. Honestly, whether it's a matrix or whether it's just a team, you just have to understand that creating, managing conflict. It's about managing conflict, and in managing conflict, you have to understand that the conflict can bring down your team. So again, you have to ensure clarity as a leader, how you stand. They have to know the direction that you're going. People follow if they know that you're not going to be playing favorites, you're not going to be throwing them under the bus. As a leader, who you are, your true north, your compass has to be clear to them. And that's the only way people will follow you with sincerity. That's the only way people will follow you and make sure that even when you're not saying it, they will support what you're doing because they understand where you're going. It's like a leader taking people to Ibadan and he can't go again, but he's told them, when we're going to Ibadan, this is the road we're taking because of XYZ. They would go that direction. They won't take the other road because you've already told them why it's important to take this road, right? So Clarity as a leader is very important. And that's why when you say without ambiguity and creating chaos, chaos comes from where people, are doing different things and the leader is a soft touch. As a leader, you have to be firm but fair. Some people sit on hierarchy and say, oh, I'm the boss, and therefore they use strong arm to handle everything. No, you have to also have that balance where you come down to the level of the people to understand what they need so that you'll be able to manage them. Managing is understanding people so that you can lead them. Okay. And it's important also for me to say that, a leader's, how should I put it? A leader's strength and how he leads people is not reliant only on the position that has been given to him by the organization. It's by his influence. And this is what this program is about, you know, influencing people and helping them to move in the direction so that the needs of the organization that can be met. So influence will matter more than hierarchy in this
All
case.
right. Thank you
Matter.
very
I'm not
much
saying
for
they don't
that.
both matter. They both matter.
Okay.
But yes, it has to be a balance.
All right. Thank you very much for that. There have to be a balance, in terms of influence and of course, hierarchy and authority. I want to believe that Chidi Ebere is comfortable with that response. The last question, I will throw that open. Tutu, if you'd like to jump on that, or Mrs. Ovota. When influence conflict with organizational values or long-term trust, where should a manager or leader draw the line between effectiveness and integrity? This one looks like a PhD question. Chidi.
I,
Yes.
I can I can start
Uh,
off with that.
all
Well,
right, so please
like
go
you
for
said,
it.
I always believe there is no compromising your integrity. Nothing
Mm,
is worth compromising your integrity. It's all we have. So once there is something that is trying to draw a line between how effective can I be, how will I be seen, and then do I need to put a stain on my integrity for that to happen, it's a non-starter. It's a no-brainer. We are out of that space. So whatever it is we can do without compromising integrity, by all means, go ahead and do it. But once your integrity is going to be impugned, once your integrity is going to be maligned as a result of any action you want to take, then it's going to be a problem. And so I always tell people it's not only about the money. Whatever organization you are working with, you are consulting with, you are doing anything with, all these things you need to be in alignment with them. You need to be in alignment with the values. You need to be able to have a mutually trustful relationship. The
Okay.
organization needs to trust that you are doing what you say you will do. You also need to trust that the organization is doing what they say they will do. So once that is in place, then we are good to go. But the minute I have to start wondering, is this right or wrong? Will my integrity be besmirched here? Then we are walking in muddy waters, and you need to
Okay.
quickly draw a line. So,
All
Mrs. I, I'll
right.
pass it on to you if
yeah.
you have.
And also,
Okay.
on
Quickly.
just as quick, I'll just quickly say add this. And
Okay.
just like Tutu has said, the people you're working with also see you. And
Mm,
if you're not doing the right thing, that is the cue they get that it's all right to do the wrong thing. So
correct.
Exactly.
you're also setting a standard, by
Mm,
your setting the proper levels of integrity and how you operate. If not, all that's how organizations get rotten because the
mm.
leaders are doing the wrong thing, and then everybody says it's okay. That's the way we
Okay, to
work.
do the wrong
That's the way we
things.
do
Wow.
things here.
Correct.
Wow. Thank you very much, my panelists. I really appreciate you, Mrs. Vota, and also Aditutu Shonguga. Thank you very much for responses to these questions. And I also want to appreciate my audience for being with us. It's almost 2 hours now. This 1 hour, 40 minutes, and you are still here. Thank you very much for being part of this masterclass. And we believe that the knowledge and the nuggets of information you've gotten from this particular program, you are going to be able to practice that. And of course, we have a link of our next coming leadership program. We expect that you'll be able, to click on this and then register for one of our future leadership courses coming up in the next few months. All right. So I think there is something here. Yes, Chidebere says integrity is either 0 or 100%. That's one of the things Chidebere is taking from here. All right. So thank you very much for this. At this point, we draw the curtain to today's event. Uju, is there any other thing you would like to share with the audience?
And just before Uju
from my
jumps
end,
in,
I would like to say
thanks, Shehu. I think we should also thank you to our moderator for doing such a great job. So thank you very much, Shehu.
Thank you
And I want to
too.
say that we were going to be having these master classes regularly. So we will always send you the email, the notification, and we would love if you come back, if you tell other people about it as well, because we've had fun. I know Mrs. I definitely had fun. I
Yes.
certainly had fun dancing with all of you. And so we hope to be able to see you on future webinars as well. So thank you so much for showing up and for putting in the questions and just, being such a participatory audience. So Uju, I'm going to leave you to do whatever it is that is going on next. I think, Uju, you do have one last engagement question for the audience, if I recall, some call to action you have for them.
Yes.
Okay, so you can go ahead and drop that in the chat. Would love to hear to read your responses to that as well. Once more, thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. In one sentence, oh, there you go. In one sentence, what is your leadership commitment going forward? Yeah, so just one word, one phrase, one sentence, as Uju says. What is your leadership commitment going forward? What are you going to be doing differently? What are you going to start doing, stop doing, continue doing, as a result of what you've heard today? I think for me, is to just continue to build influence with the team, Yes, you have authority. No one can question your authority, but influence is so much more softer and yet so much more powerful, So for me, just to continue to build influence with the team. So what are you going to be doing going forward? Yes, continuous learning, absolutely. Nobody ever arrives as far as learning is concerned. Nobody ever arrives. Thank you for that. Continuous learning. Yeah. And you can pick your medium. What do you enjoy? How do you enjoy learning? Is it by reading? Is it by watching? Is it by joining masterminds, coaching programs? How do you enjoy learning? So pick what works best for you and just keep doing that. Yeah, writing, journaling. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I love that, Sandra, having an improved mindset. Yes, 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 yes. A mindset around, how you are showing up for your people, how you are showing up for yourself. Yeah, the kind of leader you want to be. I remember when I first became a leader, I was like, oh, I'm so excited. Who is this Tutu, the leader, going to be? What's she going to do? What impact is she going to have? Yeah. So absolutely, you can have a vision for your future self. As a manager, understanding people is key to my role. I tell everyone, and I wish I had remembered to ask this question. We are all in the people business, whether you are in a bank, whether you're in real estate, whether you're in consulting like we are all in the people business, So the more we understand how to interact with people, how to get along with people, how to serve people, it's great. Growth mindset, learn, unlearn, relearn. I like that. One of my favorite quotes: the illiterates of the 21st century are not those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. You know, and in the age we find ourselves in, especially in this age of AI, you know, there's so much more to learn, so much to unlearn, so much to relearn. And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much. Thank you for sticking with us all through. Speaking the language of the business organization. Yes, very important. Otherwise, you'll be wondering, why do some people get the results they want? Why do they get the resources they need? And every time I ask, I don't get it. It's because they've learned how to speak the language of the business. They go into the CEO's office,